I used to believe that jealousy was a weakness, something immature, something that belonged to insecure teenagers. But lately, it had become a quiet companion sitting in the back seat of my thoughts, uninvited, stubborn, and whispering things I didn't want to hear. That evening, we were at a small get-together hosted by my wife's colleague, Derek. The man had a way of making everyone feel like the room revolved around him. His laughter was loud, his compliments too smooth, his presence magnetic in a way that made me uncomfortable. Laura, my wife, seemed to find him amusing, maybe too amusing. She laughed at every joke he cracked, even the lazy ones. She leaned closer to hear him, touched his arm while speaking, and once, when she caught me watching, she gave me that look, the one that said, "Don't start." I tried to keep my composure, sipping a drink that had long lost its chill. The music was mellow, the crowd relaxed, yet inside me there was a subtle tension coiling tighter with every glance exchanged between them. At some point, Derek suggested a round of board games. Couples versus couples, he said, eyes flicking toward Laura, to test teamwork. She grinned. "You sure you want to challenge us? We're a great team." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But halfway through the game, she switched sides. "Just for fun," she said with a playful smirk, joining Derek's team. It drew laughter from the group, but it wasn't funny to me, the way she looked at him, like they shared some inside joke, felt like a needle pressing deeper with each turn. When the game ended, Derek raised a toast, and Laura clinked her glass with his. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. As we were leaving, I mentioned quietly, "You seemed close to him tonight." She didn't even look at me. "Oh, for God's sake, James. Don't be jealous. It's embarrassing." I stopped walking. "You don't think he flirts with you?" She shrugged, unlocking her car door. "So what if he does? He's harmless. You're overreacting again. If you're that jealous, just go home." It was meant to sting, and it did. But beneath that sting was something sharper, something decisive. The drive home was silent. She played music, scrolling through her phone at red lights, and I stared ahead, numb. Every now and then, the reflection of her face in the window would blur with passing streetlights, and I'd wonder when exactly she'd stop being my safe place. We reached home close to midnight. She headed straight to the bedroom, muttering something about having an early meeting. I stood by the kitchen counter for a long time, watching the city lights outside our window. Her words echoed again. "If you're that jealous, just go home." It was supposed to be sarcastic, a way to shut me up. But the longer I replayed it, the more literal it became. Maybe going home didn't mean walking into this apartment we both owned. Maybe it meant walking away from everything that had turned cold and conditional. At 2 a.m., I packed a small bag, just clothes for a few days, and slipped out quietly. No argument, no note, just silence. The night air was cold against my face, but for the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. I booked a small Airbnb on the outskirts of town, a quiet place near the river. It was modest, old wooden floors, a faint scent of pine, a single lamp that buzzed softly, but it felt peaceful. When I woke up the next morning, there were 12 missed calls from her. I ignored them. "Around noon," she texted. "You really left? You're being ridiculous." I didn't reply. By evening, the tone changed. "Where are you? Are you okay? This isn't funny, James." Still, I didn't respond. It was strange how quickly concern replaced arrogance, how silence suddenly became the loudest thing between us. On the second night, she sent a photo. It was the dinner table. 2 plates, untouched food. "Come home. Let's talk." But I was home. At least it felt that way. I turned off my phone and watched the river shimmer under the moonlight. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. By the 3rd day, she stopped calling. No messages, no missed calls. Just a void. Part of me expected guilt to settle in, to feel remorse for walking away without a word. But instead, what I felt was something I hadn't in a long time. Clarity. Sometimes, jealousy isn't about possession. It's about noticing the distance that love has quietly built. And for the first time, I was beginning to see just how far apart we drifted. By the fourth morning, I expected at least one more attempt, a call, a text, maybe even anger. But there was nothing, just silence. I sat by the small window, watching the river move lazily under a thin layer of fog. The world seemed slower here, detached from a noise that used to fill our apartment. No clattering dishes, no hurried footsteps, no shallow laughter meant to impress someone else. Around noon, my phone finally lit up again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a bank alert. Laura had transferred $500 to my account with a note. For groceries or gas? I stared at it for a long time, a dry laugh escaping my chest. It wasn't kindness. It was control, her way of keeping one hand on the leash, even from a distance. That afternoon, I decided to drive back, not to reconcile, but to see what home looked like when you no longer belonged to it. When I arrived, her car was in the driveway. The house looked exactly the same, yet it felt completely foreign. My keys fit the lock, but my presence didn't. Inside, everything was neat, too neat, the kind of order that comes from overcompensation. A faint perfume lingered in the air, one I didn't recognize. It wasn't the brand she usually wore. In the kitchen, 2 wine glasses sat in the sink. One had lipstick on the rim. The other didn't. I stood there, staring at them, feeling something deep and wordless move through me. Not rage, not heartbreak, just confirmation. The kind that ends all debates. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was unlocked. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity and instinct are twins when trust is gone. There were messages from Derek. Short, careless, intimate. Derek, last night was nice. You sure he won't find out? Laura, he left. Told him to go home if he's jealous. Guess he finally listened. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Each word peeled away another illusion. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't curse. I just placed it back exactly where it was, next to the empty glass. I walked into our bedroom, the same room that once felt like a sanctuary. Her side of the bed was unmade. Mine looked untouched. There was something poetic about that symmetry. The chaos she brought, the emptiness I left behind. When she finally returned that evening, I was sitting in the living room. She froze when she saw me, her purse slipping slightly from her hand. "James," she said softly, "you're back." For a moment, I replied. She looked uneasy, eyes darting to her phone on the counter. "You should have told me you were coming. I would have cooked something." "Who was here last night?" I asked, my voice even. Her shoulders stiffened. "What?" "The wine glasses," I said, pointing toward the sink. "One has lipstick. The other doesn't." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her silence was louder than any confession. I stood up, grabbed my bag from the floor, and walked toward the door. "Wait," she said, her voice cracking. "You can't just leave. We can talk about this." I turned, meeting her eyes. "You told me to go home if I was jealous." "I did. I found peace there. But now I see you weren't talking about jealousy. You were telling me to stop noticing what was already gone." Tears welled in her eyes, the kind that arrived too late to matter. "James, please. It didn't mean anything." I smiled faintly. "That's what hurts most, that it didn't mean anything to you." She reached out, but I stepped back. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "I'm just done pretending." I left without slamming the door. No goodbyes, no last look. Just the sound of rain starting to fall, soft against the windshield as I drove away. That night, I checked into the same Airbnb by the river. The owner recognized me and handed me the key with a knowing smile. "Back so soon?" he asked. "Just needed to finish something," I replied. When I sat by the window again, watching raindrops slide down the glass, I realized I wasn't mourning a marriage anymore. I was mourning the version of myself that stayed silent too long. A week later, a letter arrived at my office. No envelope, just folded paper. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can we start over?" I read it once and placed it in the drawer, unopened ever since. Some wounds don't bleed. They fade into quiet lessons. Sometimes, going home isn't about returning. It's about remembering where peace begins and where love stopped trying.